Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling like a shadow of yourself? Not because of harsh words, but because of what lingered in the silence. A glance that cut, a pause that weighed heavy, or a smile that hid something darker. Welcome to ZENLIGHT, where we dive deep into the quiet truths of human connection, peeling back the layers of hidden resentment to reveal the wisdom that protects your peace. Today, we're uncovering 12 subtle signs that someone might be harboring ill will toward you, disguised in the everyday moments we often overlook. Stick with us until the end, because by the close of this video, you'll not only spot these silent betrayals, but also learn practical Stoic strategies to shield your spirit and build relationships that lift you up. This isn't just about seeing clearly, it's about reclaiming your power in a world that's often too loud to notice the whispers. Let's dive in. Picture this. You're waiting at a coffee shop, the clock ticking past the agreed-upon time, your latte growing cold. Your friend strolls in, 20 minutes late, with a breezy apology and a shrug, as if your time is just a footnote in their day. Once, you might brush it off as carelessness. Twice, you might forgive it as a bad day. But when it happens again and again, a pattern emerges, like cracks in a foundation you didn't notice until the walls started to lean. This is the first sign of hidden resentment. Subtle disrespect, a quiet erosion of your dignity that doesn't announce itself with fanfare but chips away at your spirit through small, deliberate acts. It's not always loud hostility that wounds us. Sometimes it's the slow drip of disregard, a forgotten invitation, a sarcastic jab dressed as humor, or a glance at their phone while you're pouring your heart out. These moments aren't accidents. They're choices, and they carry a message. Your presence, your time, your essence holds less weight in their world than you deserve. The Stoics, those ancient masters of clarity, remind us that character shines not in grand gestures, but in the smallest details. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. When someone consistently shows up late, interrupts your story with a smirk, or forgets to include you in plans, they're not just being careless. They're signaling that your worth is negotiable, that your light can be dimmed without consequence. Consider Sarah, a young professional who shared her story on X, describing a colleague who always cut her off in meetings, tossing out comments like, "Oh, Sarah's just being her usual perfectionist self," with a laugh that didn't quite reach their eyes. At first, she laughed along, thinking it was playful banter. But over months, those jabs piled up, each one a tiny stone in her backpack, weighing her down until she doubted her own voice. That's the power of subtle disrespect. It's a slow poison designed to make you question your place without ever raising a fist. The Stoics teach us to see these patterns clearly, to recognize that such behavior often stems not from your flaws, but from the insecurities of others. A person who diminishes you with sarcasm or exclusion is often wrestling with their own fears. Fear of your strength, your success, or your light shining brighter than theirs. But here's the key. Their struggle is not your burden. Your responsibility is to protect your peace, to stand firm in your worth, and to refuse to let their quiet betrayals reshape how you see yourself. In today's world, where we're bombarded with notifications and distractions, it's easy to excuse these slights as no big deal. But they are. Every time you let a sarcastic comment slide or tolerate being sidelined, you're handing over a piece of your dignity. So, how do you reclaim it? Start by noticing. Keep a journal for a week. Yes, a physical one with pen and paper. And jot down every instance where someone's actions make you feel small. Maybe it's a friend who always forgets to text back when you need them, or a coworker who dismisses your ideas with a half smile. Next, pause before you react. The Stoics urge us to create space between stimulus and response. Instead of laughing off that cutting remark, try saying, "I didn't appreciate that comment. Let's keep this respectful." It's not about confrontation. It's about clarity, about drawing a line that says, "My worth is non-negotiable." And here's the practical magic. When you start calling out these subtle disrespects, you'll notice something shift. Some people will respect your boundary, revealing their capacity for growth. Others will push back, exposing their resentment more clearly. Either way, you gain clarity, and clarity is your armor. In our fast-paced, hyper-connected lives, these small acts of disrespect can feel like background noise, but they're not. They're signals, and learning to read them is the first step to building relationships that honor who you are. So, as we move forward, let's explore an even darker shade of hidden resentment, manipulation disguised as care, where trust becomes a weapon turned against you. Imagine opening your heart to someone you trust, sharing a piece of your past, a mistake, a fear, a moment of vulnerability, only to hear it later twisted into a weapon, wielded not to wound openly, but to control you in the shadows. This is the second sign of hidden resentment. Manipulation disguised as care, a betrayal so insidious it wears the mask of friendship, loyalty, or even love. It's not the loud argument that cuts deepest. It's the quiet betrayal of trust. When someone takes the truths you shared in confidence and uses them to undermine your spirit. Picture a friend who brings up your past struggles in front of others, not to uplift you, but to paint you as flawed, to subtly shift how you're seen in the eyes of the crowd. "Oh, you know how Alex is," they might say with a chuckle. "Always overthinking everything, just like that time they messed up that big project." On the surface, it's a casual remark, but beneath it lies a deliberate intent to shrink your presence, to make you question your worth, to keep you tethered to their approval. The Stoics, with their razor-sharp clarity, remind us that true virtue lies in guarding what is sacred, your trust, your peace, your inner fortress. Epictetus taught, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When someone manipulates your vulnerabilities, they're not just betraying your trust, they're revealing their own lack of honor, their own inability to walk a path of integrity. This isn't about your openness being a mistake, it's about their choice to weaponize it. I came across a story on X from a woman named Maya, who described how her close friend would jokingly bring up her struggles with anxiety during group gatherings, framing it as concern, but always with a tone that left her feeling exposed and small. Each time, Maya excused it, thinking her friend meant well. But over time, she noticed a pattern. Those comments came when she was shining, when she got a promotion, when she spoke with confidence. It wasn't care, it was control, a way to keep her from outgrowing the box her friend had placed her in. This is the heart of manipulation. It thrives on your trust, feeding off your willingness to see the best in others. But the Stoics warn us, compassion is not naivety. To forgive a single misstep is human. To ignore a pattern is to betray yourself. So, how do you protect yourself in a world where manipulation can hide behind a smile? First, recognize the signs. Does someone only bring up your flaws when others are watching? Do their caring words leave you feeling diminished rather than supported? Write these moments down. Yes, grab that journal again and look for the pattern. Second, set a boundary with calm strength. The next time someone uses your past against you, try saying, "I shared that with you in confidence, and I'd prefer it stays between us." It's not about starting a fight. It's about reclaiming your narrative. And here's the practical step for today's world. Audit your inner circle. In our hyper-connected lives, where social media amplifies every word, it's easy to let manipulative people linger because they're part of the group. But your peace is worth more than that. Ask yourself, who in your life lifts you up without strings attached? Who uses your trust to control rather than to connect? The Stoics remind us that we can't change others, but we can choose who we allow close. This isn't about cutting people off impulsively. It's about discernment, about valuing your soul enough to say, "I deserve better." In a culture that often celebrates hustle over heart, it's tempting to overlook these quiet betrayals, to keep the peace at the cost of your own. But every time you excuse manipulation, you're handing over a piece of your power. So, stand firm. Protect your trust like the treasure it is. As we move forward, let's uncover another layer of hidden resentment, one that burns not with words, but with the chilling absence of care, neglect, and silent disdain. There's a kind of hurt that doesn't come from a shouted insult or a heated argument. but from something far quieter, a coldness that settles in like frost, unnoticed at first, but chilling to the bone over time. This is the third sign of hidden resentment, neglect, and silent disdain, a slow-burning rejection that speaks not in words but in absence. Imagine a friend who remembers everyone's birthdays with grand gestures, balloons, heartfelt posts on social media, group dinners planned weeks in advance. But when your day rolls around, there's nothing. Not a text, not a call, just a void where celebration should be. Or picture a family member who claps loudly for your sibling's new job, their voice brimming with pride. But when you share your own milestone, a promotion, a personal victory, they offer a distracted nod, their eyes already elsewhere. These aren't oversights. They're choices, and they carry a message sharper than any blade. You are not valued here. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, taught that the true measure of a relationship lies not in its loud proclamations, but in its quiet consistencies. A single, missed birthday might be a fluke, but a pattern of neglect. Forgetting your moments of joy, ignoring your calls for support, or staying silent when you need encouragement is a deliberate act of disdain. It's not loud, but it's heavy, like a stone placed gently but repeatedly on your chest until you can barely breathe. I read a post on X from a man named James who described how his best friend of 10 years stopped showing up for him after he started a new business. No congratulations, no check-ins, just a slow fade into silence. When James finally asked why, his friend shrugged and said, "I didn't think it was a big deal." But it was a big deal to James and to the bond they once shared. That silence wasn't forgetfulness. It was a signal that James's light had become a threat, a reminder of something his friend couldn't face within himself. The Stoics urge us to see these moments with unflinching clarity, to recognize that neglect is not neutral. It's a form of rejection, a quiet proclamation that your worth is less than others. In our modern world, where we're conditioned to chase likes and validation, it's easy to dismiss these slights as trivial. But they're not. Each act of neglect is a crack in the foundation of connection, and if you let them pile up, the whole structure can collapse without warning. So, how do you respond? First, trust your instincts. If you feel overlooked, diminished, or ignored, don't talk yourself out of it. Your soul knows when it's being dismissed. Keep that journal handy and note the moments when someone's silence feels heavier than it should. Maybe it's a coworker who never acknowledges your contributions in team meetings, or a partner who's quick to praise others but never you. Second, address it directly but calmly. Try saying, "I've noticed you haven't been as engaged with my milestones lately and it's been weighing on me. Can we talk about what's going on?" This isn't about blame. It's about opening a door to understanding. Some will walk through it, revealing a willingness to grow. Others will shut it, showing their true colors. Either way, you gain insight. And here's the practical step for today. Practice selective investment. In a world that demands our attention 24/7, you have the power to choose where you pour your energy. If someone consistently neglects you, redirect your time and heart toward those who show up, who see you, who celebrate you without hesitation. The Stoics remind us that we cannot force others to value us, but we can choose to value ourselves. Neglect is a silent thief, stealing your confidence one unanswered call at a time. But you are not powerless. You can choose to walk away from those who offer only coldness, to seek out those who warm your spirit with their presence. As we move forward, let's explore another subtle but stinging form of hidden resentment: withdrawal and passive attacks, where support vanishes and words become daggers cloaked in politeness. There's a moment in every meaningful relationship when you expect someone to meet you halfway, to cheer for your victories, to listen when you're struggling, to stand by your side in life's battles. But what happens when that support vanishes, replaced by a hollow silence or words that sting under the guise of innocence? This is the fourth sign of hidden resentment: withdrawal and passive attacks, a quiet retreat that wounds deeper than open conflict. Picture yourself sharing a dream you've been working toward, a new project, a personal goal, your voice alive with passion. You turn to someone you trust, expecting their encouragement, but instead, they barely look up from their phone, muttering, "That's nice," before changing the subject. Or worse, they toss out a comment like, "Oh, that's cute, but don't you think it's a bit ambitious for you?" It's not outright hostility, but it cuts just as deep, a dagger cloaked in politeness that leaves you questioning your own fire. Seneca reminds us that true friendship is built on loyalty, not just in moments of triumph, but in the quiet battles of everyday life. When someone withdraws their support or laces their words with subtle jabs, they're not just distracted, they're sending a message. Your dreams, your energy, your very spirit don't matter as much as they should. I saw a story on X from a woman named Emily, who described how her mentor at work stopped offering feedback after she started excelling in her role. Instead, they'd make offhand remarks like, "Well, not everyone can keep up that pace forever," delivered with a smile that felt more like a smirk. Each comment chipped away at her confidence, making her wonder if she was overreaching. That's the power of passive attacks. They don't confront you directly. They plant seeds of doubt, hoping you'll uproot your own growth. The Stoics teach us to see these moments as tests of our inner strength. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." When someone uses sarcasm or withdrawal to diminish you, they're not speaking truth. They're projecting their own discomfort with your light. Your job isn't to change them, it's to protect your own clarity. So, how do you navigate this? In today's world, where passive-aggressive texts and vague social media posts can hit harder than a face-to-face argument, start by observing. Notice when someone's support fades at the exact moment you need it most. Is it when you're succeeding? When you're vulnerable? Write it down. Yes, that journal is your ally again, and look for the pattern. Next, respond with calm assertiveness. If someone makes a cutting remark, try saying, "That comment felt a bit sharp. Can you clarify what you meant?" You're not escalating, you're exposing the truth, giving them a chance to own their words. And here's the practical step. Set an emotional boundary. In a culture that often rewards snark and sarcasm, it's tempting to laugh off these jabs, to keep the peace. But every time you do, you're letting someone else define your worth. Instead, choose to invest your energy in those who meet your enthusiasm with their own, who celebrate your wins without hesitation. The Stoics remind us that we can't control others' actions, but we can control our response. Withdrawal and passive attacks are not random. They're signals of resentment, and recognizing them is the first step to reclaiming your space. As we move forward, let's dive into a weapon that's even more subtle but just as painful: exclusion. The silent art of making you feel like you don't belong. There's a primal ache that comes from standing on the outside, looking in. A gathering you weren't invited to, a group chat you're not part of, a meeting where your name was somehow forgotten. This is the fifth sign of hidden resentment: exclusion, a silent weapon that strikes at our deepest human need to belong. It's not the loud rejection that stings most. It's the quiet act of being left out, of realizing you're not part of the circle you thought you were. Imagine hearing about a friend's party after the fact, seeing photos splashed across social media, laughter and memories you weren't invited to share. At first, you tell yourself it was an oversight, a simple mistake. But when it happens again, another event, another plan, another moment you're excluded from, the truth becomes undeniable. This is no accident. It's a deliberate choice, a message that says, you don't belong here. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. But exclusion tests that wisdom because it targets our instinct to seek community, to feel connected. When someone consistently leaves you out, they're not just forgetting, they're drawing a line, one that marks you as less worthy of their time, their space, their warmth. I came across a post on X from a woman named Rachel, who described how her coworkers planned team lunches without her week after week. When she asked about it, they brushed it off with, "Oh, we didn't think you'd be interested," but the pattern told a different story, one of resentment, perhaps jealousy, that kept her on the outside. The Stoics teach us that exclusion is not a reflection of our worth, but of the other person's inability to see it. Yet, the pain is real, and it's tempting to internalize it, to wonder what you did wrong. In today's world, where belonging often feels like a currency, measured in invites, likes, and group texts, exclusion can hit harder than ever. So, how do you protect your heart? First, acknowledge the hurt. Don't dismiss it as no big deal. Write it down, yes, that journal again, and note the moments when you feel left out. Is it one person, a group, a recurring pattern? Second, confront it with dignity. Try saying, "I've noticed I haven't been included in these plans and it's been hurtful. Can we talk about why?" This opens the door to clarity without accusation. Some will apologize and adjust, others will deflect, revealing their true intentions. And here's the practical step: build your own circle. In a world where social media can make exclusion feel like a public announcement, focus on the people who choose you, who invite you in, who value your presence. The Stoics remind us that we don't need everyone's approval, just the respect of those who align with our values. Exclusion is a silent weapon, but it only has power if you let it define you. Choose instead to define yourself, to seek out those who see your worth and reflect it back. As we move forward, let's explore a deeper wound, the weight of silent rejection, where repeated dismissal begins to reshape how you see yourself. There's a moment when you realize the ground beneath you has shifted, not because of a single blow, but because of 1,000 tiny dismissals, each one too small to name but too heavy to ignore. This is the sixth sign of hidden resentment, the weight of silent rejection, a slow erosion of your confidence that creeps in when someone's indifference becomes a pattern. Imagine sharing a piece of your heart, your dreams, your struggles, your hopes, and being met with a blank stare, a shrug, or a quick change of subject. At first you brush it off, thinking they're just distracted, but when it happens again and again, you start to feel like a ghost in your own life, your presence barely registering in their world. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But silent rejection tests that strength because it doesn't just dismiss your words, it dismisses your very being. It's the friend who never asks how you're doing, the partner who overlooks your achievements, the colleague who nods politely but never engages. Each moment of indifference is a drop of water on stone, wearing away your sense of self until doubt takes root where confidence once stood. I read a story on X from a man named David, who described how his sister stopped acknowledging his successes after he moved to a new city. No congratulations for his new job, no questions about his life, just silence. Over time, he started questioning his own worth, wondering if he was somehow less deserving of her attention. That's the danger of silent rejection. It's not loud enough to fight, but it's heavy enough to reshape how you see yourself. The Stoics teach us that no one can diminish our worth unless we allow it, but that allowance often happens unconsciously, in the quiet moments when we accept neglect as normal. In today's world, where we're constantly connected yet often feel unseen, silent rejection can feel like a fact of life. But it's not. It's a signal, and your job is to read it. Start by trusting your feelings. If you walk away from someone, feeling smaller, drained, or invisible, don't ignore it. Write down those moments. Yes, that journal is your lifeline, and look for the pattern. Is it one person? Multiple? Does it happen when you're at your best or your most vulnerable? Next, take a stoic pause. Before you internalize their silence, ask yourself, is this about my worth or their inability to see it? Then, act with clarity. Try saying, "I've noticed you don't engage much when I share things that matter to me. Is something going on?" This isn't about confrontation, it's about truth. And here's the practical step. Recalibrate your energy. In a culture that often measures worth by external validation, it's easy to chase approval from those who withhold it. Instead, pour your time into those who see you, who hear you, who make you feel alive. The Stoics remind us that our peace is our responsibility, and that means choosing who gets a seat at our table. Silent rejection is a thief, stealing your light one ignored moment at a time. But you can reclaim it by refusing to let their silence define you. As we move forward, let's explore another tactic of hidden resentment, the comparison game, where your worth is pitted against others to keep you small. There's a subtle cruelty in being measured against someone else, not to inspire you, but to make you feel like you'll never measure up. This is the seventh sign of hidden resentment, the comparison game, a quiet tactic that plants insecurity like seeds in fertile soil. Imagine a friend who can't stop praising others, their achievements, their style, their success, while your efforts are met with faint praise or pointed critique. "You did well on that project," they might say, "but have you seen how Lisa's team crushed it?" On the surface, it seems harmless, even motivational, but beneath it lies a darker intent, to keep you small, to ensure you never feel enough. The Stoics, with their focus on inner virtue, remind us that comparison is a trap when it's used to diminish rather than uplift. Epictetus taught, "There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will." When someone constantly pits you against others, they're not celebrating excellence. They're enforcing a hierarchy where you're always one step below. I saw a post on X from a woman named Laura, who shared how her mother would always compare her to her cousin, praising her cousin's career while dismissing Laura's creative pursuits as cute hobbies. Over time, Laura stopped sharing her art, feeling it could never compete. That's the power of the comparison game. It doesn't just wound, it silences, making you question the value of your own path. In today's world, where social media amplifies every highlight reel, comparisons can feel inescapable, and those who harbor resentment know how to wield them like a blade. But the Stoics teach us that your worth is not a contest. Your journey is yours alone, and no one else's achievements can diminish it, unless you let them. So, how do you break free? First, recognize the pattern. Does someone only highlight your flaws when they're praising others? Do their comparisons leave you feeling inadequate rather than inspired? Write it down. Yes, that journal is still your friend, and track when it happens. Second, reframe their words. When someone says, "You're good, but they're better," remind yourself, their opinion is just that, an opinion, not a fact. Your value isn't tied to their scale. Third, and here's the practical step, celebrate your own progress. In a culture obsessed with metrics, likes, followers, promotions, it's easy to get caught in the comparison trap. Instead, set personal milestones. Maybe it's running a 5K in under 30 minutes, finishing a passion project, or simply showing up for yourself every day. Track these wins in your journal and let them be your measure. The Stoics remind us that true strength lies in mastering your own mind, not chasing someone else's approval. When you stop playing the comparison game, you reclaim your power to define your worth. As we move forward, let's explore an even more personal wound. When someone uses your insecurities as weapons, targeting the very parts of you that make you human. There's a betrayal that cuts deeper than any insult, because it targets the parts of you that you've bared in trust. Your fears, your doubts, the fragile pieces you thought were safe. This is the eighth sign of hidden resentment, using your insecurities as weapons, a calculated strike that aims not to confront, but to control. Imagine confiding in someone about your struggle with self-doubt, only to hear them later say, with a smile, "Well, you've always been a bit insecure, haven't you?" It's not a direct attack, but it lands like one, planting a seed that grows into self-questioning. This isn't clumsiness, it's strategy, a way to keep you tethered to your fears while they maintain the upper hand. The Stoics teach us that our greatest defense is self-awareness, the ability to see our own worth clearly despite the attempts of others to obscure it. Seneca wrote, "No one can harm you unless you consent to be harmed." When someone uses your insecurities against you, they're not revealing your flaws. They're exposing their own lack of virtue, their need to diminish you to feel secure themselves. I read a story on X from a man named Tom, who shared how his partner would casually bring up his fear of failure during arguments, saying things like, "You're just scared you'll mess this up like always." Each comment felt like a needle, precise and painful, designed to make him doubt his own strength. Over time, he stopped taking risks, fearing he'd prove her right. That's the power of this tactic. It doesn't just hurt, it reshapes you, making you smaller than you are. In today's world, where vulnerability is often celebrated but just as often exploited, this kind of betrayal can feel like a trap. But the Stoics remind us that your insecurities are not weaknesses. They're part of your humanity, and no one has the right to weaponize them. So, how do you shield yourself? First, know your triggers. Write down the insecurities you've shared with others and notice who uses them against you. Second, call it out with calm resolve. If someone targets your vulnerabilities, try saying, "That comment felt like it was meant to hurt. Can we talk about why you said it?" This shifts the power back to you, forcing them to confront their intent. And here's the practical step. Embrace your imperfections. In a culture that pushes perfection, perfect bodies, perfect careers, perfect lives, it's revolutionary to accept your flaws as part of your strength. Try this. Write down one insecurity you've been carrying, then next to it, write how it's made you stronger. Maybe your self-doubt has taught you empathy, or your fear of failure has pushed you to work harder. The Stoics teach us that our power lies in how we frame our story. When you own your insecurities, they lose their power as weapons. As we move forward, let's explore a weapon even more subtle, but just as devastating. The power of silence as rejection, where absence speaks louder than any words. Sometimes, the loudest rejection isn't shouted, it's silent. A void where connection should be, a stillness that screams you're not worth the effort. This is the 9th sign of hidden resentment. The power of silence as rejection, a weapon that wounds without ever raising its voice. Imagine pouring your heart out, sharing a dream, a fear, a moment of joy, and being met with nothing. No encouragement, no critique, just a blank stare or a quick change of subject, as if your words never landed. It's not just indifference, it's a deliberate dismissal, a message that says, what you feel, who you are, doesn't matter. The Stoics, with their relentless focus on truth, remind us that silence can be as powerful as words when it's used to reject. Epictetus taught, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But when someone chooses silence over engagement, they're not listening, they're shutting you out. I read a story on X from a woman named Clare, who described how her best friend stopped responding to her messages after she started therapy and began setting boundaries. When Clare shared her progress, her friend offered nothing. No congratulations, no questions, just a wall of silence. Over time, Clare felt invisible, as if her growth was an inconvenience. That's the cruelty of silent rejection. It doesn't just ignore your words, it erases your presence. In today's world, where a single text can bridge miles, silence is louder than ever. A missed call, an unanswered message, a lack of response to your biggest moments. These aren't accidents, they're choices. The Stoics urge us to trust what we feel. If you walk away from someone feeling unseen, that's not your imagination. It's your soul signaling the truth. So, how do you respond? First, acknowledge the pain. Silence hurts because it taps into our need to be seen, to be heard. Write down the moments when someone's silence feels like rejection. Yes, that journal is your anchor. Second, address it directly. Try saying, "I've noticed you don't respond when I share important things, and it feels like you're pulling away. Can we talk about it?" This isn't about forcing a response. It's about seeking clarity. And here's the practical step. Value your own voice. In a culture where silence can feel like a verdict, remind yourself that your worth doesn't depend on someone else's acknowledgement. Try this. Write a letter to yourself, celebrating one thing you're proud of, something no one else's silence can diminish. Maybe it's a goal you've reached, a kindness you've shown, or simply your resilience. The Stoics teach us that our power lies in what we control, our thoughts, our actions, our self-respect. Silent rejection is a storm, but you are the lighthouse, unshaken by its waves. As we move forward, let's explore the cumulative effect of these quiet wounds, erosion through repeated injuries, where small slights build into something far more destructive. It's not the single blow that breaks the stone, it's the steady drip of water, day after day, carving grooves where strength once stood. This is the 10th sign of hidden resentment. Erosion through repeated wounds. the slow accumulation of small slights that chip away at your spirit until you barely recognize the cracks. A missed call here, a dismissive comment there, a forgotten promise that seems trivial in the moment. These are the micro wounds that don't bleed but scar, reshaping your confidence without you even noticing. Seneca taught, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that things are difficult." When someone repeatedly disregards you, they're not just careless, they're eroding your sense of self, counting on you to excuse their behavior as no big deal. But those small moments matter. They pile up like stones in a backpack, weighing you down until you're carrying a burden you didn't choose. I read a story on X from a woman named Mia, who described how her roommate would consistently forget to include her in plans, make snide comments about her cooking, or ignore her request for quiet during work hours. Each incident felt small, but over months, Mia felt like a stranger in her own home, her confidence crumbling under the weight of those repeated slights. That's the power of erosion. It's not one grand betrayal, but 1,000 tiny ones, each so subtle you might dismiss it until one day you realize you've lost ground you didn't know you were standing on. In today's world, where we're taught to let things go to avoid conflict, it's easy to normalize these wounds, to tell yourself you're being too sensitive. But the Stoics remind us that vigilance is not weakness, it's wisdom. Your soul knows when it's being diminished, and ignoring that signal is a betrayal of yourself. So, how do you stop the erosion? First, see the pattern. Keep that journal, yes, it's still your best tool, and write down every slight, no matter how small. A missed invitation, a backhanded compliment, a promise broken, track them. Second, pause and reflect. Before you excuse their behavior, ask, is this a one-time mistake or a recurring choice? The Stoics teach us to distinguish between accidents and intent. Third, and here's the practical step, protect your foundation. In a culture that often rewards people-pleasing, it's revolutionary to prioritize your own peace. Try this. Set one small boundary this week. Maybe it's saying, "I've noticed you've been overlooking my contributions lately, and I'd like us to address it." Or maybe it's choosing to spend less time with someone who consistently disregards you. The Stoics remind us that we can't control others, but we can control how much of ourselves we give away. Erosion happens when you allow those small wounds to accumulate unchecked. But you are not powerless. You can mend the cracks by choosing who deserves your time, your trust, your heart. As we move forward, let's explore the turning point, reclaiming your peace with boundaries, where you take back the power to protect your soul. There comes a moment when you realize the weight you've been carrying isn't yours to bear, a moment when you decide to set down the burden of others' resentment and step into the power of your own peace. This is the 11th sign of hidden resentment, not a sign of their behavior, but a turning point for you, reclaiming peace with boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls to keep others out. They're gates you open only to those who respect your worth. They're not punishment. They're self-respect, a declaration that your soul is sacred and not up for negotiation. Imagine a friend who's been chipping away at you with subtle jabs or silent dismissals. You've excused it, hoping they'd change, but each time you let it slide, you gave away a piece of your dignity. Now, picture saying, "I value our friendship, but those comments hurt, and I need them to stop." That simple act, spoken with calm resolve, is a boundary, a line that says, "I choose me." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Boundaries are your truth, your way of honoring what's right for your soul. I saw a story on X from a man named Kevin, who described how he finally told his coworker, after months of passive-aggressive remarks, "I'm here to work together, but I need our conversations to stay respectful." The coworker bristled at first, but over time, their dynamic shifted because Kevin chose to stand firm. In today's world, where conflict can feel like failure, setting boundaries feels daunting, like learning to walk after years of crawling. But it's not about confrontation, it's about clarity. Start small. Identify one relationship where you feel diminished. Write down what's been happening. Yes, that journal is your guide. and pinpoint the behavior that needs to change. Then speak your truth. Try saying, "When you do this, it makes me feel undervalued. Can we find a better way?" You're not attacking, you're inviting mutual respect. And here's the practical step: practice self-compassion. In a culture that often equates boundaries with selfishness, remind yourself that protecting your peace is an act of love, for yourself and for those who truly value you. Try this. Every night for a week, write down one boundary you set and how it made you feel. Maybe it's saying no to a draining conversation or stepping back from someone who only takes. Notice how your energy shifts, how your spirit grows lighter. The Stoics teach us that boundaries don't sever connection. They strengthen it, filtering out those who thrive on your silence and drawing closer those who honor your voice. Some relationships will fall away, and that's okay. Others will deepen, revealing who's willing to walk with you in truth. As we move forward, let's explore the final step: building true connections with awareness, where you choose relationships that lift you up and reflect your worth. There's a quiet freedom that comes when you stop trying to fix others and start choosing who deserves a place in your life, a freedom born of awareness, of seeing relationships not as obligations but as reflections of your own self-respect. This is the 12th and final sign, not of resentment, but of your own awakening. Building true connections with awareness, where you surround yourself with people who lift you up, who see your worth, who make you feel alive. The Stoics teach us that life is too short to waste on connections that drain us, that true relationships are built on mutual respect, not hidden agendas or unspoken grudges. Imagine a friend who celebrates your wins as if they were their own, who listens when you speak, who challenges you to grow without tearing you down. That's the kind of connection worth fighting for, the kind that doesn't just survive but thrives in the light of clarity. Epictetus taught, the key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. I read a story on X from a woman named Sophia who described how she let go of a toxic friend group that constantly excluded her and found a new circle. People who invited her in, who valued her voice, who made her feel seen. The shift wasn't easy. It meant grieving the loss of old ties, but it also meant discovering a new kind of joy, one rooted in authenticity. In today's world, where social media can make every relationship feel like a performance, building true connections requires courage. The courage to let go of those who diminish you and seek out those who reflect your values. So how do you do it? First, audit your relationships. Take that journal, your faithful companion, and write down the names of the people in your life. Next to each, note how you feel after spending time with them. Do you feel energized, understood, respected, or drained, small, unseen? Be honest. Second, act with intention. Reach out to those who lift you up. Send a text, plan a coffee date, start a conversation. And for those who consistently bring you down, set boundaries or step back. It's not about cutting people off coldly. It's about choosing yourself. And here's the practical step. Create a connection ritual. In a culture that often prioritizes quantity over quality, commit to one meaningful interaction a week. Maybe it's a long walk with a friend, a deep conversation with a family member, or a moment of gratitude for someone who shows up for you. Write about it, reflect on it. Let it remind you what true connection feels like. The Stoics remind us that we don't need a crowd to feel whole, just a few souls who see us clearly. Building true connections isn't about changing others. It's about choosing wisely, about crafting a life where your heart is honored, not eroded. As we close this journey, let's reflect on the wisdom we've uncovered and the power we've reclaimed. We've walked a path together, uncovering the silent signs of hidden resentment, from subtle disrespect to the slow erosion of repeated wounds. Each sign, each story, each Stoic lesson has been a mirror, reflecting not just the actions of others, but the power you hold to protect your peace. This journey isn't about dwelling on the betrayals. It's about awakening to your own strength, about seeing clearly who honors your soul and who seeks to diminish it. The Stoics remind us that life is fleeting and our energy is precious. You don't need to carry the weight of others' resentment or chase the approval of those who withhold it. Your worth is not a negotiation. It's a fact, rooted deep within you, unshaken by silence or sarcasm. In today's world, where we're bombarded with noise, texts, posts, endless demands on our attention, this clarity is your superpower. So, here's your challenge. Take one step this week to protect your peace. Maybe it's setting a boundary with someone who's been chipping away at you. Maybe it's reaching out to someone who lifts you up. Maybe it's writing in that journal, naming the patterns you've ignored too long. Whatever it is, act with intention, because every choice you make to honor yourself reshapes your life. If this video spoke to you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs this wisdom. Subscribe to ZENLIGHT 8 for more Stoic insights to guide you through the noise of modern life. And drop a comment below. Tell us, what's one boundary you're ready to set or one connection you're ready to nurture? Just write "I'm awake" if you're ready to see your relationships with new eyes. Stay tuned for our next video, where we'll dive deeper into building a life that reflects your highest self. Until then, stay aware, stay strong, and keep protecting your peace.